Book 101 is all about the books that are read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's the wealthy speaker, homeless teen millionaire, equipping employers to reduce financial stress and increase productivity for young professionals. And of course, award winning author, no other than Mr. Matt Paradise.
Hey, Daniel, I'm grateful to be here and have this conversation with you today.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Matt. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, I am, as you said, an award winning author, but there was a long story to get to that journey. I spent just about 20 years in financial education, working for a nonprofit credit counseling agency, national organization in the United States. And I started because I needed a job. I didn't know anything about personal finance. I started there at American Consumer Credit Counseling when I was 19 years old. And ultimately, before that was a homeless teen. Drugs, alcohol led me down a difficult path. And I know not all listeners can necessarily relate to drugs and alcohol, but I moved from Connecticut to Massachusetts to get away from the poor choices that I had made. And I'd imagine listeners at one point or another had different decisions that maybe you wish had done differently and tried some internal work or tried moving and found that wherever you moved, you were still there and there was more to learn and grow through. That was my case anyway. And at 19, I really was a high school dropout. Selling drugs didn't look great on a resume, but somebody gave me a chance and learned and grew and added value to the organization as the organization grew. I was about the 25th employee and eventually obtained my GED, obtained some college, obtained some different certifications that allowed me to counsel, coach, and teach. So, financial education, credit counseling certifications, and identity theft, risk management assessment, different certifications that really added value to people. So, I as I learned and grew, I also wanted to help people avoid the stress that they felt as a result of finances. And people feel stress, it's real. Maybe listeners have had credit card debt. Maybe you currently have credit card debt. Maybe inflation and monetary policy is making it difficult to make the ends meet. Well, that's part of why I started the education outreach group with American Consumer Credit Counseling was to teach classes throughout the community. And I loved it. My wife and I ended up in a situation where we were overwhelmed, burnout, um, as a result of adopting a child and growing our family and our life situation where she was working really long hours, demanding work as a biochemist. And for myself, I managed other financial educators and speakers, as well as grants and different programs on top of going out and speaking. So we created a plan in this is now 2018, to stop working at American Consumer Credit Counseling and I'd start my own coaching, counseling, consulting, and speaking business. And I was able to do that. 6 months, though, after I started that LLC, I was diagnosed with bile duct cancer and was intense few years, to say the least. Hard to fully say all of what's involved with that, but cholangiocarcinoma. My PSA for the moment is if you start to feel any type of sickness, go get checked out. Don't wait. I
Yes.
ignored some symptoms for a little while. It's always better to err on the side of precaution. For myself, I ended up in July 2018 coding on the table. I was home alone, called 911, rushed to the hospital, and uh, the doctors told my wife that I wouldn't make it and to start planning and preparing for that. The following several months, I had to learn how to say crazy word that I had never heard, cholangiocarcinoma. It literally took me months to figure out even how to say it because I never gave my bile ducts a second thought
Mhm.
until I had to, and the option was taken away. But by grace, I survived. Obviously, I went through chemo, radiation, and had a liver transplant. because I wasn't able to get on stage and interact with people and do keynote speaking and other programs that I enjoy and love to this day, that's a large part of my business and what I do. Because that wasn't possible both through COVID, but also my physical state, I put energy into writing a book. And the book, Financially Capable, A Friendly Guide to Building Whole Health Wealth, really is my energy, effort, and purpose put into a couple hundred pages based on not just my own learning and experience, though there's some of that, but the 100,000 people plus that I helped coach, counsel, and also learn from. And because I had that opportunity to learn from people, I feel like it enriched the book tremendously. And all those different lessons and more are included in the book.
Mr. Man Paradise, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Hoping for more and more empowering books like this to come. And how do you define whole health wealth, and why is it fundamentally different from just having a large bank account or investment portfolio?
Multiple ways that it differs from just having a large pile of money. The concept of whole health wealth is well researched and documented. It's the idea that the different domains of well being are inseparable, they're connected. Too often, though, we silo, we tend to separate the domains of well being. So think about physical well being. Mental health is huge right now, post pandemic, and we won't talk about politics now, but the political and world environment, the world in which we live, causes a lot of stress and anxiety for many people. Our relational well being, as well as our occupational well being, and certainly financial well being. So, financial well being is more than just having a large amount of money, but it's also working towards feeling peace ultimately at the end of the day. It's not necessarily accumulating more stuff. And that's a trap that many people fall into. That's why credit counseling organizations exist, because there's a feeling that accumulating more stuff or trying to pursue getting stuff will help fill a hole in our soul. So, again, spiritual well being, emotional well being. And that financial well-being really suffers because of compulsivity as well as physical health and other, again, the domains that are inseparable. So building whole health wealth is all about a more global holistic perspective as it pertains to wealth and well-building.
The title emphasizes financial capables, not just financially literate. What key
Yes.
skills, mindset, and system does the true capability require that go beyond basic knowledge?
So knowledge is certainly included in becoming financially capable. There's three primary areas of becoming financially capable, and the book is organized into those three key areas. The first section is our environment, the world in which we live, and that includes everything from economics, macro and micro. It includes regulation, whether every country is a little bit different, but certainly there's everything from central banks to different corporate insurances. And the United States, where my expertise is based, it's things like the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and NCUA, which helps to insure credit unions. It also includes things like systemic racism. And there's a history of systemic racism and limiting access and opportunity to financial services and products that can otherwise build wealth. And that's seen all around the world. In the United States, there's a not too distant history of things like redlining. And when I say not too distant, and redlining, I'll help define that so that anybody that hasn't heard of redlining, it's the practice where a financial institution, a lender, limits where they actually will lend money for a mortgage based on zip code and based on where somebody lives. And oftentimes, historically, that's been disenfranchised people, minorities. And that's not the long, far distant past, but even in the last few years, the government has levied significant hundreds of millions of dollar penalties because redlining still exists, the discrimination of lending. So that certainly directly impacts wealth building. Getting by in the world in which we live and understanding access and opportunity is the first part of being financially capable. The second
You know,
section of the book
yeah.
is organized based on financial psychology, why we do what we do, the decisions, the choices that we make as working within this system and financial environment in which we live. We still have agency, and the choices that we make impact our financial well being significantly. So, this includes everything from addiction. And it says, I know all too well, and includes some personal stories. I was a homeless teenager and overdosed when I was in high school. Being sober minded is critically important for all the decisions of life and building whole health wealth, but certainly when it comes to being financially capable as well, because addictions aren't limited to drugs or alcohol. There are reasons why places like Spenders Anonymous, Debtors Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous exist, because there's a compulsivity, and within the brain, those different process addictions work similarly to a drug addiction. If anybody's ever heard the term retail therapy or shopping therapy, it's the idea that going out shopping and buying something on impulse provides some excitement, some temporary joy. However, for many, it ends up also jeopardizing the essential bills, paying rent and buying food and just getting by. And working in credit counseling for 20 years, I saw that firsthand. Families who struggled, sometimes because it was years of making decisions that jeopardized their finances and putting that money and subsidizing that lifestyle on a credit cards. And sometimes due to no fault of an individual, they fell ill and different medical expenses made it difficult to choose medicine, hospital bills, or food and groceries and stable, secure, safe housing. So that financial psychology is important. It's critical and it's also difficult. It gets into beliefs and values, systems where personal finance, it's important to keep the personal in the personal finance. I mean, it's in the title, but all too often we can hear, oh well, this financial person, self-proclaimed guru, said, if I just do these 10 steps, then I too will be a millionaire. Well, it's a little bit more, not just complicated, but more nuanced than that. Because for each of us, what's best for me may not be best for you, Daniel. And for each of our listeners, everybody has a different system of beliefs and values, different backgrounds, different goals and dreams, different aspirations. And that really is important because for some, a life of minimalism is something that they are after, and that's okay. Minimalism essentially is the philosophy of cutting away every expense other than the bare necessities. I have a friend that actually moved to right near the border of Canada, up in Maine, and completely living off grid. So there aren't any utility bills, or there's really growing everything that he possibly can. And that's a lifestyle that he chose. It doesn't require a lot of money to do that. It's
Hmm.
not the choice that I make for myself or for our family, because I don't make decisions in a bubble. My wife and I work together along those lines. So our system of beliefs and values is different, and therefore the different goals and what we choose to do with the resources, money being a significant one, as well as time, effort, energy, our knowledge, we direct it in to different areas of our lives. And then the third section is what you had mentioned, Daniel, the financial literacy. I call it the nuts and bolts, understanding how to manage money. The budgeting section, I call it the dirty B word, because just that one word, budget, for many, automatic emotional response. Too often, when we think about budgeting, and many thousands of clients that I've spoken with, when we think about budgeting, we start to think about limiting factors, how many bills I have and the money that I don't have to pay them, the fun that I want to have, but how expensive it really is, the goals that I have for my family, whether it's large goals like college or retirement, or smaller goals like buying clothes and making sure that our kids have what they want to go on a field trip or something like that with school. But ultimately, when we have a change in perspective to think of a budget not as a limiting factor, but as something that provides freedom and something that helps us to align our core values and beliefs with the resources that we have. A budget ultimately is a list of priorities, and aligning those priorities in our life, whether it's paying rent or mortgage, or whether it's my friend up in the border of Canada and Maine, where his priority is to be unencumbered by all the expenses of this world and stopped keeping up with Joneses many years ago. Whatever our system of beliefs, values, when we align them with our priorities, we are generally far more fulfilled. As people, there's a lot of dissonance created when our resources, our time, effort, energy, as well as our money, are not aligned with our core values and beliefs. So, those three are the three key areas of being financially capable: the environment in which we live, financial psychology, the choices that we do in our own behaviors, and also the nuts and bolts, the financial literacy, are all critically important and essential to becoming financially capable.
Very well said, Mr. Mad. Beautifully, beautifully articulated. And as a wealthy speaker and award winning author, what are your short and long term goals?
So, in the short term and long term, living a life of purpose is my ultimate goal, and define purpose as the best of what I have to help others. And going on to different companies, organizations to speak about financial well being and the idea that it does affect the bottom line of a business. It's not just an extra expense, but investment in their given workforce. So consider for a moment the statistic in the United States alone. It's estimated that $47 billion every week in productivity is lost because of employee financial stress. Financial stress is huge. For the employee, it also means that the financial stress is overwhelming and starts to affect our physical being. And we get sick. And the research data shows, again, not just mine, empirical research, the data shows that when we have the financial stress, the physical reaction of that stress in our bodies leads to more sick days, leads to hospitalizations, high blood pressure, stroke, cholesterol. All of those things are tied to financial stress. And again, we can't just separate that out. The whole health wealth is that idea that obviously what we eat, our exercise, our overall lifestyle affects that. But financial stress directly impacts people. So part of my purpose and long term goal is to reduce employee financial stress, both for employees in the workforce, but also for businesses and all of that incredible amount of money that's lost because of the financial stress.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Matt, and looking forward for more success. What would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
S- Don't do it alone. There's always hope, and take the next best step. So for me, I am not a believer for the first one, don't go it alone. So I'm a firm believer that there's no such thing as self-made. There's so many mentors, so many people who cared, so many people who had a vision for me when I didn't have one for my future. I didn't think that I'd live past 20 years old. I mentioned earlier, even in our conversation, Daniel, that I overdosed as a teen. I barely survived. And through a lot of depression, I didn't picture myself where I am today by any stretch. I didn't picture myself living past 20, but people cared. And I still need people today. I list my mentors in the book. One of my favorite sections is the acknowledgement because it's heartfelt love letter to so many people who have helped me along the way. The second part, there is always hope. Hope is a strategy. Some people will say, oh, well, hope's not. Hope is essential. Hope is essential because when we lack hope for a better future, we tend to not make great decisions in the present moment. We ourselves need that hope that there is a future, that prosperity and success of whatever that means for each of us, and we can define that differently, that it's possible, that life beyond today can get better, no matter how dire or deep we might be in the financial stress. There is always hope. So don't go it alone. There is always hope. And there's just so much that I'd love to continue talking to people about. I love this conversation. I love providing this information, and I really do appreciate listeners' time in listening.
Mr. Matt Paradise, thank you so much for sharing the hope to the world and hoping for more and more empowering hope to come. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast law 101 and mental health 101, love letters in its third season, and movie 101 review and music 101 in fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Mr. Matt, how does your guide frame financial capability not as a destination but as an ongoing practice and a skill set that adapt throughout life's different stages?
Yeah, my overall journey has been one of growth. I'm still learning, especially when it comes to the financial behavior in that whole middle section that I spoke about in the book,
Yes.
because discipline and building a practice of gratitude is ongoing work. I found that cancer totally shifted my perspective on whole health, wealth, and well being. My whole work has been around personal finance, financial education, and having a near death experience and the experience with cancer and being terminally ill until I received that liver transplant helped me to realize and know that there's so much more to life. Our health is wealth. Many may have heard that before,
Yes.
but it's something that I took for granted because I was otherwise healthy. And it's easy to take for granted what we already have until it's taken away. And I realized that when my health was taken away and didn't know whether I would live day in, day out. And again, the hospital told my wife that I wasn't going to survive and it was unlikely that that would happen. I realized in that moment that we each have one day at a time to live. We can have long term goals, and that's important. And in our hearts, we can create those plans. But as a person of faith, ultimately, I know that it's up to God who determines those footsteps. And where I'll end up in the future, I don't know. But I know that today I can be grateful because I'm alive. Today I got to feel the
Yes.
heat and humidity outside. I wasn't in the hospital. That was amazing. I could
True.
feel the sun on my face. It rained for a moment. And when I took the dog out, I could feel that rain. And that was amazing. And it's not a message of overall optimism. No matter what happens, life is difficult. And there's times where that pain feels debilitating. And it has for me. But I know that even in those times, I can still have joy. And that joy that's in regardless of external experiences and circumstances, I can have joy to know that that pain that I have felt and I know will feel as long as I'm alive ultimately develops in me perseverance. That perseverance grows my character. That character helps to develop hope. Hope never disappoints.
Definitely. Again, Mr. Matt Paradise, thank you so much for sharing your hope to the world. And let's celebrate your second life to the world. And can you please invite our listeners to support your book, your advocacy, or any projects that you are doing right now?
Yes, thank you for that opportunity. So, my book can be found where books are purchased: Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can also just connect with me, mattparadise.com. I want to give a shout out to the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation. They're strong in Canada, they're strong in the United States, and also their sister organizations all around the world. Mind your health. I know that's
Mm.
a perspective that I had to learn through great challenges, but I don't take that for granted. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It really has been a pleasure, Daniel.
Yes, prevention is better than cure, people. Yes, let's support Mr. Matt Paradise because if you support him more and more empowering hope to come, more and more empowering, inspiring books to come. So, Mr. Matt, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
More to come, people. See you soon.